Once he finished the script, what was his participation in the process? Buck, maybe you can address that. Did he just deliver the script and that was it, or did he participate in the pre-production and the production process?
He was available after delivering the script, so that if he was wanted, any questions, he would be available. He did not intrude into the production process, largely because he and I had gotten acquainted and he was comfortable that I understood what he wanted. So he was there, but not much in the, matter of fact, he had another script to write.
Right.
Write down.
That's true.
Did he look at dailies? No.
Not very often, no.
But he looked at rough cuts, I'm sure. No?
Sometimes, sometimes. But pretty often, yeah, he'd look at rough cuts.
Tell us, Monty, what it was like being a director on The Twilight Zone. I mean, this was really unusual material for a director to tackle.
Yeah, it was absolutely the most joyous time I had in early television, because I was doing a lot of really sinister kind of schlock. And I'd been doing that as an actor, and being a kind of a refugee from the New York theater, I thought, what am I doing here? And suddenly I was getting a chance to direct, and I wasn't getting a lot better material. Suddenly came these scripts from Twilight Zone. It was absolute bliss. And when, as an actor, as a person who kept asking questions, I would go to Rod and say, you know, there's problems in this. He'd say, just do what's on the page. And I thought, well, now that's not a very friendly approach to a director. And I would discuss it with him, and then he'd get involved, and you got excited. When you got into an argument with Rod, it was lovely, because there was heat. And then there was always Buck. Buck was a blessed gift to a director as a producer. And so somehow it was a kind of triangulation and excitement until we got the cast. And then I always insisted on at least a day, sometimes 2 days of rehearsal, which they thought was rather bizarre. But others did it too, so it got to be that, hey, it pays off because you spend less time fighting the actors on the set, saying, what am I really supposed to be doing here? Because that's being worked out in rehearsal. All right, that got to be okay then by that time. And Rod was more and more, I did some very early ones. Buck, how early was the first one I did, which was the one with Gladys Cooper and Bob Redford? That was, I think, listed as 62. I thought it was earlier.
Yeah, I think the second season. Yeah.
It was the second season?
Yeah.
Can't remember.
That was but George can talk about that one.
Yeah.
Because George wrote that one. Nothing
Right.
dark.
This is our human database.
Right.
Well, my connection with the show was Buck Houghton. I worked for Buck. And trying to get anything past him to be accepted was murder. But he was the most complete, finished, cool, prepared producer I have ever worked for. And I think some of the best work that I ever did was directed by Lamont Johnson. When I look at those old shows, I just want to cry. And in answer to that question about that prolificness of Rod's, you're dealing there with a man who wrote Playhouse 90. He wrote Requiem for a Heavyweight. He wrote Patterns. For anyone who could do that, these little one-act plays are duck soup, and he could do one between lunch and dinner.
Not quite.
Good point. He dictated all of his scripts?
Yes, absolutely.
To a secretary?
Didn't have a
or to
really good
dictaphone?
mechanical, I don't know whether he would have managed the computer or not, but he had a secretary, and he would dictate everything. In the beginning, well, he would play all the roles, too, which was fascinating. You could listen to him. Had a little trouble with the women, but the rest of it.
Did he revise once the first draft came out?
Well, with a Playhouse 90 or something like that, it would take him months. These, literally, it wasn't between lunch and dinner, but it was pretty fast.
But close?
Yeah.
Shell has something to say here.
I just wanted, Steve, the ability that Rod had to concentrate was really extraordinary, and it always amazed me, because once he would get the concepts, it was total concentration for sometimes Buck, correct me on this, I think I'm right, it would be 3 or 4 days, and he'd walk in with a draft. And it was easier for him to revise completely than to fix something, which also amazed me. I first met Rod on Playhouse Night, and his work habits were as intense there. But of course, he was dealing with one play, one script. But it continues to amaze me. I look at this material now, and all of the brilliant visuals that were staged by the directors, and it really is brilliant work. But Twilight Zone really was a language series, and these gentlemen sitting next to me here, Richard and George and Earl, contributed to that. It was about language. The language was wonderful in the series, and I think Rod kind of led the way in that. I remember Jack Weston very well, an actor whom we just saw, who said that when he picked up the script, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, that he said he could taste the words and really responded to it. And I think it's difficult to say how did Rod do it, except that extraordinary ability to concentrate once he had the idea.
George, you wanted to make a comment?
Yes, one comment. We're looking back at the past now, but I think Rod should really be praised for what is going to come in the future, because he's made it absolutely clear that high-quality films, half-hour films, can be made that are basically last acts. Martin was talking about this piece that he was doing. He said a little 2-character piece, but 2 characters or 3, and 1 set and a couple of props, and you have a Twilight Zone. And the reason that actors like it is because they are 1-act plays. They are meant to be almost done live. Boom, 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 do the whole show. Then boom, 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 do it again from another angle. Boom, 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 do it another. You could make 3 or 4 or 5 versions of a play in one afternoon with videotape. And anyway, the future lies ahead. This kind of a story, there's endless amounts of them. Richard's got a closet full of them. I can think of 3 or 4 right now that would make absolutely splendid plays, and I'm sure that's true of most of the playwrights in town.
There's one other thing about Rod that I think we should be grateful for, especially as writers, and that's the image that he projected to the world at large. I think most of us as writers, people have the vision of us as nerds who sit back in little offices and turn out scripts mechanically. But in Rod, we saw a vigorous, a creative man, a good-looking guy, obviously a good role model. So I think he left a good taste in everybody's mind about writers in general. We're all still trying to measure up.
Earl.
Well, I just remember, you know, so many writers, forgive me, but oftentimes I used to work with writers. They also always seemed to treat their scripts like Bibles, you know, and you didn't change anything. You know, it was heresy to do that. And I remember with Rod, it was not like that at all. I mean, if you had a suggestion and made it to him, and he took out his pencil and started writing. You know, I was stunned when that happened. That was happened on the first Playhouse Night. The 2 other things. You were talking about when Rod would disagree with you, or when Rod disagreed with you, he would smile and look at you and with that charming smile and say, "Let me put it this way. You're wrong." But the other, I mean, does anybody remember that? Yes. The other thing was, Carol, I want to ask you, when we were doing the Twilight Zone pilot, he said to me that he had started writing as therapy when he was in the hospital in the war, and that he said he was in the hospital, and he said he was either writing or basket weaving, and he chose to write. Is that true?
More or less.
More or less?
I think it was the 3rd choice, dancing. and he
I'm
did
sorry?
that. The 3rd choice was dancing, and that he
dancing.
couldn't do.
But he did start
He did
as-
start writing when he was in the Army.
As kind of as therapy.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Is there a connection between Rod Serling's personal experiences and the sensibility and tone of the Twilight Zone?
What's the question?
You mean, was he weird?
I've actually wondered if there was some connection between some, childhood trauma or, wartime experiences.
I think he, like all writers, used experiences that he'd had, particularly in the war. Or there's one I know he was in a bus station and he saw someone across the road or across the room that looked like him. So out of that came a script, you know. With the fabulous imagination that he had, you know, he could make a half-hour script out of a single little episode like that. But he was just as afraid of cemeteries and creaky attics as the next guy.
Did you know that many of the most important broadcasts of the 20th century have been lost forever? The first televised presidential address from the White House, Elvis Presley's first radio appearance, and Super Bowl I. These and many others were discarded or simply erased. It wasn't until the founding of the Museum of Television and Radio in 1975 that a focused effort was made to collect and preserve the recorded sounds and images of our time. The museum is the home of our collective audio and visual memory, what made us laugh, what made us cry. The events that we've shared, from man's first step on the moon to 9/11, the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, the comedy of Lucy, Happy Days, Seinfeld, and The Simpsons, and dramas from the Twilight Zone to 24, they're all here. Membership is vital in our efforts to preserve these moments and make them available to you and future generations. I'm proud to be a part of this institution, and I encourage you to join me in making it better than ever. Log on to our website at www.mtr.org and make the Museum of Television and Radio a part of your life.